Welcome to the Hedera HashCast, episode 8. I'm your host, Warlock and Key, and in this episode, Deepak and I will be talking with our very own privacy guru, Debra J. Farber. Debra is CEO of Principled LLC, previously worked as privacy strategist and DLT evangelist for Hedera, and is one of the judges for the upcoming Hedera 2022 Smart Contract Hackathon. How are you, Debra?
I'm doing great. Yeah, there's so much going on right now. It's exciting times.
Now, the audience probably doesn't know this, but Debra and I actually met long ago, before I started this cute little podcast, via my NFT project, Creates.
It's true. I've got a Kenny. I've got an original Kenny. And I think it was the second NFT I've ever purchased, which I don't think you knew, but now you know.
You were one of the first people to ever hold a Crete in general. I mean, that's a big honor. Sort of. Now
you're welcome. It was weird. It was appropriately weird for my brain for me to go, wow, that stood out from other things I'm seeing in my feed. And I really wasn't into the NFT scene yet. So many people moved over to Hedera once it was more economically viable and they liked Hedera. But like to begin with, when NFTs emerged on Hedera, I was focusing on DLT. So I think Kenny, your Crete kind of just stood out, and I was like, that's weird, and I must have it.
Yeah, the early days of Hedera NFTs were strange. It's still strange, but it's a lot less ramshackle, I guess. But we talked early on about your unique perspective on the Hedera NFT community when it was kind of budding. And before we get into some privacy-centered questions, would you care to share a little bit about your journey with Hedera NFTs?
Sure. So with the NFTs specifically, so I had a 6-month contract with Hedera. I'll first just kind of address as a privacy strategist, and so it was focused on thought leadership, external thought leadership. Wrote a white paper on how to architect with privacy and data protection in mind, embedding privacy and data protection by design into what you're building, into your dApps when building on DLT. And I mean, it's pretty much broad advice for anybody building on any DLT. But then I also crosswalked like what are the privacy preserving elements of the different Hedera network services. And so that's available as a white paper right now on Hedera. And then, I was also speaking at conferences and, being very active online and making referrals to Hedera as a layer 1. And so then I had about a month or two around the holidays where I'm figuring out what I'm going to be doing next, how to reorient my focus, where am I going to throw a lot of my focus behind? Because I've also been, besides the distributed ledger and Hedera stuff, I had kind of made the move a year ago away from corporate America, leaving Amazon, at the time Prime Video, AWS before that, and kind of saying look, big tech's not doing things necessarily the right way, or they have a lot of technical debt for privacy. They might have built in security related things, but the contextual how everything changes around privacy based on context. And if you hadn't built with a privacy by design mindset and have privacy engineers building your tech and understanding all the potential problems that could arise so that you can prevent them, then you're going to have challenges. So it's much easier to just start with a new set of technology that's more robust, that has thought about some of these issues. And so for me, this whole world of, we could call it Web3, we could call it just new set of digital trust technologies. It's those technologies that drew me in. So to get to the actual question, which was how did I get in the NFTs? I had a break around the holidays, and it was just as, the NFTs were getting really, we were drawing a big crowd, and everyone was using the wallets that had been created, some of them as POCs. Maybe we didn't all know that. And they weren't fully fleshed out with full on, let's say enterprise grade, security at times.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we're playing in this space, and I'm watching And I'm figuring out, like, I want to understand this technology. I want to understand what's drawing people to, create PFPs, and why do they want like one of ones to have as their profile, and like what's the sociology around why people are drawn to this. And I kind of knew early on, like, look, if I go in and start pointing out all the problems, I'm just going to be that person no one wants in the group. And we already have a shortage of women in tech, in NFTs, in DLT, and all of these new technologies. So, I'm just going to go in and listen, right? Which is always good for any market research. And I didn't expect that in doing that, I'd actually come out with community, that I'd build relationships like I have with you, Warlock, with others as well, with just with May from HashPack, with all the various players, because we're all just kind of have one little piece of the pie that we're bringing to the table. And we all have different perspectives that we're bringing in. Some come with like large, I don't want to say large, but some come with very strong ideologies about what needs to happen. And for me, the ideology that I come with to this space is just ethics, right? Like, let's just make sure we're doing things respectful to the humans who are, we're serving. And so what I started to, I could keep going. I'm just gonna keep going if you don't stop me. But I could tell you, okay.
No, it's good stuff. Good context, like for me as a person too, because I was learning a lot of the same stuff at the same time.
Right. Yeah, indeed. I remember that's when I reached out. And so for me, what I saw that, like, from a privacy security perspective, that was just obvious. And I'm just sitting here like, white knuckling, is all the sharing of, email addresses and name and like wallet IDs and all of this stuff that in Google Docs, which has just become part of the process. You've got your Discord server, which, is noisy and has a lot going on. And there's so many NFT projects. So how many Discord servers can you actually join and still be involved with? But then there's also the, the fact that the data collection method is through like Google Docs, which isn't of itself the problem. The problem is you're giving it to some, strange person whose name you don't even know, who may or may not have some sort of social reputation already, where maybe you feel safe giving them money, or, maybe you don't. And what's been interesting is, I just kind of gone on faith to just try it out. And I'm like, if I lose this money, I lose this money, but I'm just trying this stuff out. And it's just amazing how much community and trust you have in certain people you've never met in your life, that are just like pseudonymous with like, maybe a panda, or, pick your
Lots
funny like NFT animal, right? I just see one right now at the top is like a panda. So like, it's a weird new world. And I've come out of it with a lot of understanding that there's still security holes that could lead to people being surveilled. Could be whether your account is being surveilled. I mean, we all know that they're kind of like public anyway, but like, do you want anyone to know who's behind it? If so, you've told a bunch of strangers already. So now they, at any point in time, they could just like type your Hedera account in and see all the NFTs associated with it. Now, is that by default like a problem? I mean, no, it's kind of how like this space works. Everything's transparent, but there's a new set of like privacy challenges that, if like, I'll go into it knowing everything's going to be potentially public. So know that when I'm buying and storing my NFTs, right? Others might not know that, and therefore they don't have the right threat. They're not addressing the threats that might be there, right? Like maybe it's an ex that wants to see what you're buying, and it's like, oh, you're spending all your money on this, and now they just have a piece of info about you that you just didn't want known or disclosed. Like, so behavior is going to be changed based on what we know is going to be public and what is not. This is why we don't like to be surveilled. It changes our behavior once we know we're being surveilled, whether it's at work, whether it's at, in school, whether it's online. So, those are important things that just kind of came to mind, and kind of summing up my journey. I own way more NFTs than I ever thought. I've diversified in many ways, but it all comes down to the project and whether I think that there's for me, there's any sort of utility, and utility could be a lot of things, but I think we're evolving beyond just art for the sake of art. I feel like in order to make a mark in the space and be heard above the noise, you've got to have something that is benefiting your community more than others.
One thing to touch on is I hate the fact that people can see what is in my wallet. If I want to transact with somebody, they can see how much HBAR I have, and in the future, maybe if there's a multi-wallet, how much of everything that I have. Is there a light to the end of the tunnel? Like, I don't want to have to deal with this. I don't want people to see how much money I have in my bank account. And it's the same for this. Will this end?
There may be other layers of abstraction that are added on in the future for, like, if you're in a DApp that's like social sharing or something, like there might be ways to prevent, seeing certain things if someone doesn't know your, like for instance, maybe they don't know your account number, but they're able to just share an element about you from the account that you've designated. I think we're going to see years before that comes on the market, mostly because the technology by design is designed to be transparent and thus available. And so, there's other ways to do what we're doing with NFTs, just in a less decentralized manner. I mean, really the only unique thing about an NFT is just a token that's decentralized. So we've been using tokens for a long time. I mean, that's how like, our credit cards work. It's like tokenization with the EMV chip. And so I think we're going to see, because this use case is very different, of using a token to be like, I am an owner of something, and now because I show up with it, it shall unlock things in a decentralized way is different. And we're talking about re-architecting things to put people at the center so that they can control their own data, and we're not necessarily like slaves to the companies that manage our identities for us, right? So I think there's a lot more pieces. We need a lot more advancements in self-sovereign identity and like decentralized identifiers and more. The tech's coming to market, the tech's being used, but will we see major advancements like in the NFT space soon? It's a good question. To be honest, I'm an NFT buyer. I'm not an NFT strategist. And my first use cases that I fell in love with are things like Acor and others that are using NFTs to represent digital rights. And I'm seeing this for like in the ownership space, for like licensing and IP, in addition to representation of like, here's my consent. Then I revoke my consent for this, but I add that consent back. And, it's just a constantly changing narrative consent when you're talking about like your medical journey through a clinical research program or something. You have to just constantly, there's this consent process. So, he's used NFTs in that way. And I just think things like that are huge innovations for enterprises. But then like with NFTs for consumers, like what we're doing on, like when we buy them through our wallets and we're like these different projects we're buying them from, I think it's a big experiment right now. I don't see those yet as real world enterprise in use, like use cases. I see them as potential enterprise use cases that are right now, proof of concepts, and a lot of money is being thrown at proof of concepts. But I think there's a long way to go. There's also a lot you're bringing up, because it's a completely different story if you want like the cash you use that you've turned into digital cash and preserving that from the government from seeing through CBDCs is definitely a different discussion that I understand the importance of, and I don't have all the answers to. I just know that those are issues. It's a problem for digital cash. But my opinion on it is anonymity really makes sense for the digital cash space. Just same way right now, cash is a bearer instrument. You want to be able to just like not have every single thing you're done tracked. Like, I get that. That makes sense to me. And I hope that there's a solution there that they're working on, whether that's like who's the, how the CBDs operate or how it's architected or what. I'm not an expert, but I do think, and I've spoken about this before, that anonymity is an edge case for identity. For most, think of it. Think of your own life. How often are you, in what scenarios are you like, I'm showing up now and I'm showing up as my, my non-identified self, right? Like, maybe it's Twitter where you're like, I'm Privacy Guru, but that's pseudonymous for me. Everyone knows me as Privacy Guru, Debra Farber's Privacy Guru. Like, it's just like my nom de plume. It's my, it's just a pseudonymous placeholder for Debra Farber. And, I've chosen on purpose. A lot of people, I would say, on Reddit on purpose are anonymous. And that's totally fine, because then the social construct is everyone assumes everyone's anonymous, and that's fine. Maybe you get some clout because you're now an anonymous person that has some clout, but you don't, for the most part, we don't, outside of a pandemic, walk down the street shielding our faces. The reason this is so important and why I'm mentioning it is there's so much in the narrative that if you anonymize things, you no longer have a privacy problem. That's true. If you unplug, you no longer have a security problem, right? Like from your computer, but then you're unplugged and you're not connected. And so the point is, if you want to play online, you want a secure connection. You want to make sure every aspect of that is secure and you're not, right? So it's the same with privacy. And here, companies want to reduce their liability by minimizing their data exposure, by minimizing the amount of personal data they're liable for if it's hacked, if they're breached. And so data devaluation happens in different ways. You can tokenize, you can anonymize, and you usually anonymize your data set as a company when you want to share the data set with a third party. That could be public research. That could be, I want to share the data set with, a third party that just wants to understand metrics, but doesn't need to know about the identifiers or how many individuals did a thing, right? You just need to know individual impressions, right? You anonymize. But anonymity is not the point. The point is to reduce your compliance burden. So you anonymize for that reason. The point for consumers not to always be anonymous. The point is that when we show up to a new technology, a new digital service, you want that the engineers and the architects and the product manager have thought about all the ways in which the personal data that's collected or used can be exploited, can be used against you, so that they put in controls to prevent any of that. And so what that means is I want to show up and be Debra Farber every day, but then decide, hey, I'm in a leadership conference right here or a leadership course, and I only want to share. I don't want to get too personal. I want to share what I do for work, and these are the elements I want to share. But then maybe I'm then in maybe it's now I have eczema, so like an eczema support group. Maybe I want to get a little more detailed about what that's like for me and whatever. It's basically thinking by default, everything that you build, you needs to be built with privacy by design. Everything is the most privacy protective. You think about making it the most privacy protective and then enable controls for humans to make decisions about what they're sharing and when. And so when you think of it in those terms, then you're architecting completely differently than, can I do a thing to make money? Or, yeah, you might be able to, but then you're going to, how much participation are you going to have when we're moving to a trend of decentralization, more empowerment for the user, less so for the company, or the company should only be able to make money in the future? These are the trends. This is what everyone's talking about. If it benefits the human around whom you're collecting the data from. No more exploitation, right, of the human. We don't want to be the product anymore. And so this anti-surveillance capitalism, it's all moving it to give us more control over how we show up and what we say about ourselves, because privacy is all about contextual, context and identity. And so, okay, I'll take a breath.
I'm trying to sort through the questions that you just destroyed and get rid of them, because you addressed them. It's like, can I ask this? Oh, that's gone. That was great.
Ask them, because I'm sure I could go more in the weeds. I just trying to be holistic here.
No, it was great, and you touched on a lot of stuff. I'm glad we started with the NFT stuff. I know a lot of people don't want to hear about NFTs. I don't bring them up as much as you might think. But I think that was a really good entrance point for a lot of stuff, because it's, doxing and anonymity with NFT creators is it's an ongoing discussion. And a lot of people think, I want to be completely anonymous. I don't want people to know. People like me who, I guess my utility is leveraging my personality and what I'm doing and what I'm creating and stuff.
And your voice.
And my voice. So I'm 3/4 doxed, I hope I don't go all the way because it'd be really
That's
easy to
not what
find me.
doxing is, but everyone in the NFT space misuses the word. So
Okay. Give me the real word then. Let's learn something.
Well, I mean,
today.
you're saying you're disclosing. I mean, you're not doxing. Doxing is like an attack. Like I'm going to, be an attacker without consent, revealing someone's identity. And not just their identity, but like where they live or where they work or, something about them where you can then go and then people pile on. But yeah, so one does not dox themselves. They just disclose who they are. But, people want drama in this space.
That makes 100%
you're just following
sense.
What everybody else is doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's one of those things that is kind of the use of the word has evolved past the original intention to just be like removing your anonymity, which
It's okay. Crypto's gone beyond cryptographic or cryptography, which is where it's like it's too late to take the genie out of the bottle. It's like crypto means cryptography.
Yeah. Let's not even talk about like what the heck metaverse means. Like we don't need to have that discussion. Yeah, words, and there's a million acronyms. Like the amount of acronyms I have to look up for the podcast. It's just we love our acronyms in this community apparently. Tech, tech, business too. We love our acronyms, and it's just like, I'm not a big expert, so I'm having to learn so much. Which side benefit of the podcast is I get to talk to smart people who tell me things.
Indeed.
Tell me a bit about your time working as privacy strategist at Hedera.
Kind of mentioned that at the beginning. I mean, there's really not that much more glamorous than I was working on white papers. So the great thing was that Hedera gave me ready access to staff that was working on the technology. Anytime I had questions, they were always available to help make sure I understood or answer those questions. What's interesting is, and it's unusual, like most people come into DLT and it's like, oh, I'm familiar with Bitcoin. And then I learned about Ethereum or maybe they started at Ethereum or because they cared about smart contracts. And then that's not how I got into DLT. Like I heard about all of that stuff, but I didn't get interested in it until I heard about Hedera and I read the white papers and I read everything I could about it because it's like deep tech. So I wanted to really understand it. And so understanding Hashgraph first is a weird way of then getting into DLT because the whole world is talking about smart contracts and Ethereum and things that are not on Hedera. And so I was like, this is amazing to me what it's, from a technology perspective of what I think it could do, especially in the enterprise space, especially for preventing a lot of breaches, preventing privacy problems, security problems. But people think, oh, it's a secure network. Great. I'm just going to start building on it. And you're like, you realize there's other layers to this, right? In the stack, the network is by nature a secure, decentralized, layer one. That's consensus mechanism. It does the settling. It's like a Visa, which I worked at. That's freaking cool. But as a developer, I keep hearing people, I see things like, oh, security and privacy are the most important challenges for the metaverse and for building. And it's fascinating that people keep saying this. And this is coming up consistently in studies that market research is doing, but the developers are not reaching out to security experts for the most part, or privacy experts, and I get it. I'm in the startup community. I'm an advisor for 9 different companies. And some of them are in privacy and ethical tech. Others are just others are nonprofits or such. And one of them's XRSI. So it's the XR Safety Institute. And the whole organization is there's several different work streams for medical XR and for children in XR and all of these potential new challenges you get with extended reality, which is basically, VR and AR put together, right? So metaverse, whatever metaverse becomes, it's kind of like saying the internet. It's different extended reality platforms coming together to create one metaverse. So no company is building the metaverse even though there's many, and even in the Hedera ecosystem that claim to be doing so, let's all remember that like marketing dollars, VC money, all of that is going to metaverse. I do believe that the metaverse is going to be a thing that we're all building to, but it's going to take at least a decade to even get like a little bit of adoption to whatever metaverse is, since we don't even have the hardware yet that can do the processing power for half this stuff.
1 billion percent,
let's get the ethics right. Let's get the security built into your app, your DApp. Like we keep seeing headlines every day about maybe people think it's just wallets and exchanges that are getting that have security problems. The reason that those are getting hit the most is because that's where the money is. Where most of the money is. So in the decision tree of where, as a criminal, you're going to go exchange first, then you're going to go wallets, and then, other places that might house something of worth. So I don't know. I guess it would be wallets mostly. But you could also go and like exploit an app and then just be like waiting and hiding for something to come there, and then, or I should say, like exploit a vulnerability, and then the vulnerability like is just sitting there waiting to be exploited as either it's a 0-day or it's not, or it's just a common attack vector. My fiance is a white hat hacker. He does this for a living. He works for Yahoo as a paranoid. That's their security team, and they have one of the best offensive hacking teams on HackerOne's platform at least. And so I have like a random understanding that's separate from the world I've lived in of the hacking world that I've just been exposed to for the last decade because of just going to DEF CON and like actually learning to do some hacking. And it is incredibly easy to find a lot of low-hanging fruit, just a lot. I mean, developers need to know how to code securely. And if you're not taught this in your CS course, or you're not taught this in your boot camp that you learned code from, like go and learn a course. There's plenty that are free, even on some of these free websites, or like Coursera, where they're really like cheap. If I encourage you to actually not get a free one and buy one from someone to like help the ecosystem. But you really need to understand what the potential, what are you coding to protect against? And there's just so many things you wouldn't think of that give a hacker more information about your attack surface. So really encourage you to, look at the OWASP top 10, security vulnerabilities and get smarter on security, because they're going to come for you. And all these hacking platforms, basically you could get white hats to find vulnerabilities and then get paid for finding them, because then the company will be stronger by fixing that vulnerability before a criminal comes and tries to do harm. So I'm telling everyone I know that does hacking, I'm like guys, to hack on Web3 stuff, like a lot of it's just shit code. I mean, a lot of it is like, it's not the same. I mean, you see stuff being built on Hedera, and then you see that there's a wide variety. I mean, for some, you're like, oh, look, Google's a GC member, right? And they're probably doing something with Google Cloud, like who knows what, like I'm waiting like the rest of you. But that they're hiring like a whole bunch of people to think smartly about architecture. They're not just like, oh, cool, I want to do a game. I'd like to do a game. Hedera is cheap and like friendly to the, it's green. Let's just get to work and start building the app. Or I've got an NFT idea. It's going to be, I don't know. I think like dog toys. I don't know. I'm like looking around, my raccoon for my dog toy here. So it's going to be dog toys. It's like, great. So you're just going to do the same model everybody else does for the same thing, and all it's going to be is like you're buying dog toys instead, or you're buying virtual Hedera pens, or like whatever it is. Like you still need to have like a tech strategy for how you're going to do this securely, so that you don't only make a fool of yourself in front of, let's say, the HBAR Foundation, who you want money from, who might revoke the money. Like if you make a major misstep that shows you're not thinking about the security of what you're putting out there, and you can't make it safe even for a POC, then why would you get funding to scale that, right? You're clearly not showing you have expertise on board to do it right. So
for listeners, Debra is touching on the the scenario we had with Exact Wallet recently, where a lot of private keys of users were exposed, and that's when you have a wallet, that's a big no-no. I mean, we've had some private key exposures from NFT creators like Hashgraph Punks, and recently with Warsome Wizards. But when you're talking about your users, if someone like Debra was saying was lying in wait and collecting that data when it was being exposed, it could be years down the line before they capitalize on that. And there's a reason why there was a lot of outcry for that.
Yeah, and different, like if you're even thinking threat actors and so like nation state actors, like the Chinese offensive hackers aren't usually like destroying your stuff. They steal IP. So they might just sit there and wait and collect data about, and like you'll never know it's there. Russian cyber hackers are a lot more, a lot more maybe willing to damage something, right? They're not just trying to like collect info. So it's just interesting to kind of know that. It's like a little off topic, but
no, that's not off topic at all.
To touch on what you're saying, I mean, right now we've been seeing a lot of. You said wallets are one of them. What we're seeing now that's like massive are a lot of bridge hacks. Most recent one being the Ronin bridge, which was $500 million, which is insane. It's absolutely incredible. And these are like big institutions that are, that are backing this infrastructure. But to also touch on your point about comparing maybe bigger tech, even Google, Facebook, these guys also like have their fair share of security vulnerabilities. Security is something that I think everybody has.
Yeah. We just had Google's been rolling out stuff for recent exploits. There was one like a week ago or so that was like a huge exploit that they had to fix. And then I think yesterday they had another massive exploit that they had to tell everyone, you need to update right now. So yeah, it's everybody.
That's true. And
it's going to have different impacts depending on, is it third-party software that's embedded in like, half the companies around the world? That's going to be like a 0-day too is going to be like a big deal. Like, is it in the hardware? Because if it's in the hardware, I mean, like that's exploitable for a while. You're not going to be able to just like update the hardware super easily, right? Like, so, I mean, it's all about kind of, and this is not even my work. Where in the ecosystem the vulnerability is and how quickly it is to either isolate or whatever, or to fix the problem. Because the problem could be, like I said, this is what my fiance does. He does the metrics around it for vulnerabilities at Yahoo. So, you're looking across your ecosystem and you might see hundreds of like bug reports come in, like security reports come in, and you need a way to not just triage them and like deal with them, which you do, right? So if you put out a bug bounty program and you say we have here's our disclosure program, here's our bug bounty program, submit bugs to this, but don't have developers on staff to go fix those bugs as those reports come in, you're going to be overloaded really quickly, right? Like there's a team, there's an effort that you have to invest in if you want ongoing security for your organization. There's constantly that monitoring process. And even if you do pen tests, which are just point in time, you still want to make sure that you've got opportunities like for anything public facing. You want to make sure that someone's tried to string together some attacks and can't get in, right? And this is just, it's an ongoing thing. I do believe that by moving to some of these technologies, because, it's going to enable a lot more verifications of actions of apps. Like you can verify that apps were doing this or not doing this, or verify the app collected this, but it only uses this information under these circumstances. I'm helping some companies bring those products to market using like DIDs, verified credentials. This I believe is going to change some of the problems that we have today. It's going to have a different set of problems, and they're going to be at different layers of the network stack, right? Or of the stack. Some might not be at the layer 1 network. Maybe it's at the layer 2. If you're like, Ethereum and you need a layer 2, you've now introduced a bigger attack surface. You now have another layer, right? So there's a lot of factors, and this is why like it's important to hire security and privacy architects and and experts, whether they're AppSec or they're, I don't know, hardware hackers, or they're, privacy lawyers, or technologists. It depends on what you're doing, but this is why it's important. I also think, like what I was saying is that in the future, the goal is that instead of having to, I don't know, for instance, a good example, find where all the personal data is across all of your enterprise, so you could delete it when someone says so, but like that was not the original requirement. So no large enterprises like built for that. They had to add that on afterwards. And trust me, I worked on this at like Prime Video at Amazon, and it's like a big challenge to put the genie back in the bottle. So if you move to everything's verifiable all the time, kind of like instant auditability, like kind of place, you don't have all of those problems and the exposure of personal data. And security is slightly different, right? Security is not just protecting personal data. It's also the integrity of your system, the making sure that people can access it when they want, and availability and all that. So I'm just going on and on and on. I will just wax philosophically about all my ideas if you don't give me another like direction.
You make a lot of great points. And since there's just been such a massive amount of exploits all across every vertical, I'm excited to see how companies are going to start onboarding onto DLT and to utilize cryptographic truth. There are going to be great things that'll come out of the chaos that we're currently in right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's a bunch of proof of concept projects, right? Now, I'd say Hedera has like the largest number of real world use cases by businesses today, right? Like that seems to be the case. That's what they built for. They made it enterprise ready, and absolutely love that it's tied to the US dollar. And, that way it just could be, like enterprises can budget for number of transactions and estimate for that. I mean, like, I think all of those are all of the, there's a word we use when we're public policy wise, when we're going into a new capacity. It's capacity building for the thing we actually want to have in place, right? So it's all the elements to build up to having these reliable systems in the future. And right now, people are just playing around with different DLT layers to figure out what works with them. And like, some might not have heard of Hedera. I'm trying, there's one founder I'm working with now, trying to get him to work with Hedera, but it's like, well, I met someone from this company about a year ago and they had some good ideas. And I'm like, you're not even looking at the layer one right now. Let me put some stuff in front of you so you understand the differences and you could just make decisions. But there's a lot, it's like really hard. If you're a, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you are a technologist today and you want to birth something new into this new world of, we'll call them Web3 technologies, but there's these technologies that are enabling for more trust, right? Trust-based technologies. Then you're really thinking big about the future of like, what's the world going to look like in a decade? What's going to look like cloud technologies? It took 10 years before I'd say that there was even like an inkling of real adoption for them, right? I remember sitting there working for some healthcare companies going, we'll never move from on-prem to a cloud environment. Like, it's just, we want to manage our own risk and we don't trust you. And like, look where it's come today, right? Where it's like even more secure at times to be using cloud services because of how much the cloud providers have thought about security. Privacy, not so much, but security. If anything, it's like, no, you're responsible for privacy because you're responsible for what you put in our cloud services. But that's another story that I have a whole bunch of opinions on. So my point is, looking at the layer ones is like kind of overwhelming. You're looking at like, okay, well, everyone, I mean, I know Ethereum, but I also hear there's problems with gas. And now what? I don't know what else to do. Like, where else do I go? Who do I follow? Like, if you're not like following cryptocurrencies and how they're doing on the market, like as a technologist, it's like, you're going to need to find someone that helps you figure out what your use case and then the best DLT for that. And I think there's a lot, I mean, here's an idea, like someone go create a market like platform that decentralized or not, that like helps pair people based on their use case with the right DLT. The point is, like, it's really, there's so many aspects of building new tech right now that will be, sustainable for the future, and that will still be around in even a year, forget about 5 or 10, that it's overwhelming to the founders. And so it's just the state of the early stage we're in, even though a lot of people have been in the space for what feels like a long time and seen a lot of changes, and they have like war wounds and such. Even they'll say it's just still early. It's just still early. And so we're just going to see a lot of needs not met in many areas because we're still so early.
The way I think about it, and I've got this little metaphor in my mind that I just always imagine. It's like it's like the Wild West. We've got frontier towns, we've got some infrastructure, but it's still, it's still wild out here, and there's not a lot of specific rules or guidelines, and most people discover it because they get pulled into it, either because of something they want to do, as a developer, or because of, they're trying to chase wealth with investment opportunities. It's this untamed thing. And it's super interesting to like watch it grow.
Parts of it are unregulated. Now, not all of it. Right.
I mean, you got the sheriff.
You got the sheriff that apply. What's that? I'm sorry.
You got the sheriff, right? But there's still, it's not lawless, but there's weird boundaries.
I want to say, like, so I've had someone be like, yeah, but it's not regulated, so why do I whatever for security? I'm like, oh no. There are security laws on the books. Like, I don't mean securities. I mean, like, information security. Like, you're required to do certain things on certain instances as a business. You can't be like, oh, it's not regulated for security. It's like, yeah, it is. It's not. It just because it's online doesn't make a law doesn't exist. The laws around enforcement and how would you go around, like, even enforcing fraud in this space. I mean, there's laws about fraud. If you wanted to and you were defrauded in the Web3 space, you could go to small claims court if it's low enough, or go to, a state or federal court and say, I was defrauded by X company. You don't need laws for that. They exist. But there's some unique challenges in this space that, in order to keep like companies honest and keep them ethical and whatever, you're going to need additional laws that will, I don't know, a good example of one, I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but like KYC, for instance, is like the goal there is to be able to understand, like, prevent money laundering and stealing from banks and all of that, right? Like, the goal isn't to just on purpose, like, surveil people. That may be the result, but like, there are reasons that there are, hurdles you have to go through at times that are friction points. And very often that's to protect either individuals or to protect consumers as a whole. And I think there's an opportunity now for people to have their opinions and to get it in about, like, what does the future look like? And there's a whole variety of opinions on that. But I think we should be clear that plenty of laws exist today that can hold people accountable for doing really shitty things or committing crimes.
Absolutely.
It's just, we might not have a police force or enforcement who's going to actually, like, take your call and go do something about it because they have no way to effectuate that enforcement,
Yeah. And, that's when the sheriff's out, sometimes mob justice rules.
And that seems to be the case. I mean, we see online attempts at doxing people that we just, judge and jury kind of public sentiment says, this person's bad, go dox them or whatever, or go... I don't know.
Go say mean things about them and make a mean meme saying that they smell and are not cool.
Now you've gone too far, Warlock. That's just too far.
Well, I'm lawful evil, of course. So.
Oh well.
I think this is a good point for our podcast halftime. This time is set aside for our guests. Have a little break, maybe have a little drink, and for me to do paid reads of copy. So if you're a business, organization, or just an extra supportive community member, and you'd like me to read something aloud during this time, please send an email to HederaHashCast@gmail.com, and I'll let you know our rates. This week's sponsor is Hot Dog Hustle. Are you tired of being a soggy wiener? Unloved, floating in a sea of lukewarm hot dog water? Are you ready to hustle? Are you ready to send it? Are you ready to hit it out of the ballpark, grab every topping life has to offer, and become a based brat god, filling every bun and relishing every moment? Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Can a hot dog NFT project change the world? You bet your buns it can. Join in and become everything you ever wanted to be and rich beyond your wildest dreams in friendship. Sold at super affordable prices with tiered rewards for accumulation, tiered rewards for set collection, and each tier packed with gifts and access to special editions. The Gen 1 layers are delicious, the Discord is freshly cooked, and the governing council are out of their minds. Drop everything, drop it, and join the hot dog hustle. That's podcast halftime. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Debra.
Very much. A dramatic reading of the hot dogs and the buns. I mean, I'm now hungry. It was
That's real utility, friends. That's real utility.
Success. You got me hungry.
Let's dig into some more stuff. You present a lot of entry points for like more interesting stuff. Let's expand on DIDs. Now, for our listeners, that's decentralized digital identification. You might be asking yourself, but wait, ID is part of the acronym. So I stands for I and D stands for identification. How does that make sense? It doesn't. But can you tell us more about your thoughts on DIDs, Debra?
Sure. So DIDs are, decentralized identifiers. And they give you the ability to for self-sovereign identity, which can be defined as like a lifetime portable digital identity that doesn't depend on any centralized authority. We kind of need a new class of identifier that fulfills like 4 requirements. And this is like from the W3C that's kind of been building out the DIDs. But those 4 requirements are persistence. So you want it to persist. You want global resolvability. So, and cryptographic verifiability. And then lastly, decentralization. So basically, you need the ability to cryptographically verify ownership of the identifier. And so the DID really is about that ownership piece that everyone's talking about. Of your identity, okay? So instead of actually going, like today, we have like usually like 3 or 4 options when we go to a website to sign in. We're either, hold on here, let me get back to Discord. Okay, we're either signing in with an email and password.
Right.
We're signing in with like an OAuth, like Google. Google's identity management system, Facebook's, or sometimes Twitter, although I don't see that much anymore, or LinkedIn.
Why would you use that? So, that's weird.
Yeah. Well, so the interesting thing is that I'm not sure how many of you realize this, but a lot of the companies suck up more data by using these, like to surveil you across the web, like your behavioral advertising. And to display advertising based on your behavior, not just based on targeted ads, but based on things you've done online. And Facebook has been appending this data and like using you, even if you're not on Facebook and you're using Facebook to like log in, they're logging that you went to that site and spent X amount of time there and a whole host of other things because you used their login. So they're like, we're providing you with this secure service to log in. Hey, it makes it easy. You don't have to remember your passwords. Look at this. But in the end, it's part of, and Google too, part of the kind of surveillance, capitalistic ideas that like we're all kind of rallying against. I want to manage my own identity. Why don't I manage my own identity? Because managing keys is really hard. Mm-hmm. That's where decentralized identity is kind of coming in, and they're creating decentralized identifiers and standards around using those identifiers for developing new systems where you come in and port in your identity. And what those attributes mean for an identity could be different from place to place. So like, I think we're going to see a lot of, I think we're going to see some innovation in how we're able to show up in places, especially in the metaverse, where we can be a lot more creative and have avatars. And, I think we're going to have multiple identities. Why do we need only one? Maybe for different purposes, we try on different identities, and maybe we look different. And maybe, I want like, I don't know, a mohawk, and, I want to be a skater or something in like this metaverse or this XR kind of experience here. But like when I show up to hang out with my family, maybe it's a different experience, a set of attributes I want them to visually see about me, or, and then there's all this biometrically inferred data. Like there's a whole new world of potential trackability in the XR metaverse space. So there are new ways we need to be thinking when we're there, when we come with our new identities. We want to make sure that we have a feeling of safety and sovereignty over our avatars, our physical selves, our psychological safety. Are you going to show up and all of a sudden someone's too close and they like grab my boob, and that might trigger me, even though I'm not like, physically feeling touched, and it's just in this environment. Like you got to think about how humans are going to interact in these when you are making it easy for people to do so in this like immersive experience. So there's so much. So decentralized identifiers will, sorry, my ADHD is taking me all over the place, but I took my meds today, so we're good for the most part. So, and you could cut that out.
No. I mean, no.
You can leave it in. I don't care either way.
No, hey, full disclosure, I also have ADHD.
We're super creative people.
We're super creative people. It's just, sometimes brain doesn't work as much as we'd like it to in the right way. But no, you're talking about a lot of interesting stuff. And my dream is for my digital identity to just be a fantasy necromancer in my, family's metaverse Thanksgiving in 10 years. And just force them to see a weird skeleton man, and be like, hey, how you doing? And I'll do my weird voices, and people will just have to accept me that way. But yeah, there's a lot of rules and guidelines and societal quirks we're going to have to re-experience in this separate digital underlayer society that we're so not ready for. We don't know how it's going to be. And like we're talking about with all these different terms, and it's all going to change. It's all going to change.
And it's all going to change. I mean, there are trends, right? I mean, There's trends of decentralization, trends of, people not, the market changing behavior based on perceived surveillance and privacy problems, security problems. It's not just, you need to be compliant anymore. That's what's forcing companies to be compliant. It's like, no, I mean, this is how I'm able to like now champion this stuff, because it's no longer about compliance. It's now the market has spoken and said we're unwilling to accept the status quo, and we're moving away from big tech because we don't trust them, right? And as a result, like, okay, well, how do we get trust? And so that's really the big broad focus that I've been looking at. Even Lehman from Hedera, like he's been thinking, his entire thought process when coming up with Hashgraph, based on what I've heard him say, is that he wanted untrusted party. He was just trying to solve the Byzantine generals problem, where it's just the mathematical problem set of how do you get untrusted parties to trust or come together and trust one another for a transaction, where they're trusting the transaction even though they have no trust in each other. And that just kind of really tells you what the central point is, that we just need to get away from all the other fluff. It's about trust. And so areas, for anyone who's listening, there are plenty of areas from social, like sociology perspective, all the way to the technical, that are really talking about how do you get privacy, security, and trust in new digital technologies. So the Trust Over IP Foundation's working on this. Different areas of this too. IEEE just set up a new security. I got it. The owner of this, who's going to run with it, is going to kill me for not knowing the exact name. But it's like it's basically cybersecurity in emerging technologies like in this space, basically. And then, what do those standards look like with some associated use cases and best practices? And like, it's all the help. I mean, like, so if anybody wants to be part of the standard setting process, those things are going on right now. You could get involved with the W3C, that's, around the internet protocols that specifically that they're looking at. There's, like I said, IEEEs, mostly engineers, but anyone can join those orgs. I'm part of XRSI. I'm leading what I'm going to be calling the Metaverse Guardians. So I'm helping to turn their privacy and security framework mapped to XR related and specific use cases that they've done the past year. And there's a working group if you want to be part of that. We're updating the second part right now, like just adding some more to it and making it more of a toolkit. I personally am not working in the weeds on that. I'm turning that into a larger program that can then, get more grant money, I may be doing a podcast on the metaverse and privacy and security and ethics, but turning it into more of a program, so not just a framework by itself, but more efforts to engage with experts and technologists and bring them all together to have these great conversations. So there's so many ways to get plugged in. And I know our community is mostly the entrepreneurs that are actually like building. But think about the fact that you might actually not only, if you join one of these, and a lot of them are just free, you just show up and like be part of the, thought leadership. But if you're part of the standard setting process, imagine what that tells people when you're looking to raise money about how closely you're aligning to standards of the future, right? And like, you're not going to miss any of them. And you can maybe meet other experts there that you bring on as advisors or whatnot. So I just encourage you all to get involved beyond the just DLT or, is it HBAR or Cardano or whatever your, pick of the cryptocurrency day is. I have no capacity anymore for those conversations because it's a matter of time management. And so I think if you get to that point too, you'll know people moved on to some like, let me solve a problem somewhere or be part of a solution group.
Oh no, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that kind of stuff on this podcast. We mostly talk to developers and, talk about what's going on in the space. Like we're not, we're not going to talk about price really. We're not going to talk about, oh, Cardano's lame. Yeah, we don't address that. But yeah, I mean, getting involved in this big community, I mean, you have a chance to be a part of, building the new foundation for what this is going to look like. I think a lot of people should take advantage of that because, I mean, I'm taking advantage of it in small ways. And yeah, more people need to realize this kind of zeitgeist is something you can be a part of. It's not something that just happens to you. You have agency here. So I think
right.
that's really important.
And that's kind of the point too, right? We're giving people agency through self-sovereign identity, and decentralized identifiers are a key part of self-sovereign identity or decentralized identity, if you want to be a little more corporate America friendly. But either way, like the point is that we're now, just bringing it back to decentralized identifiers, we are going to be managing our own keys. And right now that's not easy to do. And I think we'll see an evolution of companies making that easier to do. Because, right now I'm not confident that, members of my own family would be able to confidently not lose their keys or figure out how to do Web3 stuff. My mom's like, how do I invest in Hedera? And I'm like, I'll just make an investment within my own for you, Mom. Like I don't even know how to walk you through like an exchange. I can't. So until it's easy for my own, like my mother to do, I think there's a long way off for major adoption. We're going to just see slow uptick of adoption regarding self-management of identity. But once there's like a major, shift and there's some things on the market and there's like, the standards are pretty much set and we're getting like the hardware out there and all of that, I think we'll see like that take off the same way we saw the iPhone take off or, another technology that's just majorly changes the game. But when this puts people in the center, we show up and then like we're no longer the product. It's like, we're not going to plug into your system with our identity if we don't see any value there. So I'm going to go where there's value creation for me. And, we see that with the creator economy where it's like, I don't want, pick one like Spotify. I don't know, maybe they're taking, people feel like I'm not, as an artist, I'm not keeping enough of the money, and they're just, why do they take so much? And you're even starting to see companies like LinkedIn and other long, Web 2 companies that have been around for a long time go, okay, we need to enable a creator economy, right? So they're doing it. You don't need Web3 tools to have a creator economy. It's a business model choice. But what we're seeing is a confluence of, these ethical, human in the center business models combined with new technology to really enable the rise of, your regular human to be able to take actions and not have to rely on, these, whether it's a bank or whether it's like any sort of intermediary to get something done. It's faster, it's cheaper by cutting out intermediaries. So do it in a secure way. Use Hedera. I mean, you could, I love Hedera, but I do believe we're going to see, just like we see multi-cloud today, we're talking about decentralization, and it's not just decentralization of processing or governance, but it's going to be decentralized, like we talk about at Hedera, it's also decentralization of our governance council in across geographies, across markets. So we're going to see probably in the end, like, there'll be multi chains, same way that we have multi-cloud, whether it's for backup or just different systems need, different use cases need different networks. I don't think we're going to see like, something like 20 networks using the same system, but maybe, I don't know. And I don't really know enough about bridges other than what they do. They bridge together different systems and, you wrap your tokens, but like it just sounds like magic to me right now, right? So I want to get smarter on bridges, but I don't know. I'm just rambling now. I just love this tech because it's so much you can do at the lowest layer that it can prevent you from making so many mistakes. Above that, if you architect it with the right expertise in mind.
Yeah, I mean, just sending NFTs to people, I'm constantly impressed by Hedera's network. Because I have had to do stuff with Ethereum, and oh my goodness, is it a pain? It takes forever and costs so much money. For some upcoming stuff, why don't you tell us about your role as a judge for the upcoming Hedera Hackathon?
Okay, good question. So, I'm really excited about this. The hackathon has support from like a whole host of different partners and governance council members, and just even companies like Hashpack built on Hedera, and it already kicked off at the end of the month, last month on the 31st, and I believe it goes to mid-May, May 16th, and so after that, based on the number of submissions, I'm not sure how the judging is actually going to work. Are they going to, is it like each of us judges is going to review like two of them, not two of them, sorry, like they'll make sure that two judges are on, at least two judges reviewed everything, or is it going to be that everything is reviewed by everyone? I don't know. All I know is I'm like, wow, I'm really excited to be part of this. I don't regret agreeing to it, but there's already, I looked on this, like 600 people that have registered as to be part of a team. So I think we're going to get an enormous number of submissions across these 16 separate challenges and award categories. So I will be, looking through. I think there's certain features like, obviously it's the smart contract 2.0 kind of focus for Hedera, and so making it it's EVM compatible and using like Solidity is like obviously the point here. So that'll be interesting that the focus is on that. For me, I have to admit, I just talked about smart contracts more in the abstract. So to see them being deployed in real world use cases on Hedera, I'm like super excited to see those business use cases and demos. Personally, since I'm not, I'm a technologist, but not a coder or an applied technologist, I will be paired up with a developer who reads code so that as I ask questions, they can give me like feedback about, I don't know how the code was written or
writing extra context.
Extra context, exactly. So I really appreciate that Hedera, they offered that, which so otherwise I probably would have been excluded from being a judge. So I'm really glad they offered that to, not only give me the opportunity, but it is allowing me, allowing more women, I think, to come to the table who may not be as like developers or as technical, even though we have lots of, I'm technical, but not applied technology.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not technical
really
at all.
Appreciate the inclusivity.
Yeah. I wish I had one of those people in my daily life.
Well, you could speak to a developer advocate. I'm sure if you had an idea, like they'd be at least, point you in the right direction. That's what they're there for. Or even
I bother Justin Atwell all the time.
Okay,
Explain this. But it'd be nice to have have him in my pocket or something, and just whenever I needed him.
I'm sure he could come up with a service where you can pay him every time he pops up, and it's like,
whoa, pay him!
The genie is in to give you.
I just wanted all that for free, but convenience does come as a cost. All right. Yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot of ground. That was a lot of fun. That was a great interview. I think Debra's smart, everyone. I think maybe you learned this for the first time. I knew it forever ago. But I think it's time to bookend this one. Thank you so much to Debra and Deepak for joining me. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like, and follow us on Twitter at Hedera HashCast. Thank you for listening and for helping to build a consensus in the Hedera community. Thank you to our patrons, ABFT FTW,